You, Mahen, Malraj, and all of you. And yeah, Mahen, I couldn't hear you completely.
Now it's okay. We can hear
Did
you.
you say something?
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Malraj, can inviting me to share some of my thoughts on this power crisis. In fact, you can see that I am also on a standby line because this hour there's no power in our area. So
Yes,
right in the middle of the power cut. Yes, power cut. So anyway, I have a dongle plugged into a power bank. So I hope that my continuity will be there. Okay, so I will share a few slides and just briefly tell you something about the existing energy sector a little and electricity sector more. So that because the electricity crisis is more felt than the other problems. Okay, because electricity is so close to us and so vital for us. But this 35 years. So you can see, because we are now energy intensive, we want energy in many forms. We want energy for cooking, energy for electricity for our lighting and other comforts, cooking, and many other things. So, but for that we need basic sources. So this is how our sources have been evaluating in the country, and you can see the bottom green one, that is a fair big portion throughout. That is biomass energy that is coming into our society. Bakeries and so on, they are using a lot of the orange one, that is the imported fossil fuels, petroleums, that is crude oil as well as refined products. So you can see after mid 1990s, it has expanded widely because after 90 for power generation in large quantities. And then we can see the black component, black part, that is the introduction of coal for power generation. So if we didn't introduce coal, that would also have been the orange, that is from the fuel oils. And then the blue one is our friendly power coming from major hydropower plants, Lakshapana, Victoria, Kotmale, and so on. And the top green patch, we can see that is the new renewable energy, what we call nowadays. That is solar, wind, biomass, and small hydropower. So this is how our energy is coming throughout. And whenever there is a shortage, we are in trouble. And so this is petroleum products or fossil fuels, including coal. You can see crude oil, we have been importing the brown, and then the finished products, you can see we should have had it is uneconomical. For example, Singapore, another important, not for also refined at that.
Then, yeah, Wi-Fi එක ටිකක් අවුලක් ඇතිනේ.
Is it okay
Professor,
now?
no, I think we
Yes.
lost your presentation. I think best thing is if you can mute your video and present it, you should be able to
Okay.
present it
Yes,
without
I
a problem.
think so. I think so. Yes, I will share again because I think I was disconnected. I am on
Yeah.
the mob thing, and I will share it again. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's okay. I think you can go back to the previous slide and speak, Professor. That
Yes,
would be great.
yeah. Wait a minute. I will switch off the video part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is done.
Yeah, you have switched off the video now. That's fine.
Yeah. So we can see we had the space for we have had the space for last 15, 20 years for another refinery which we didn't do, and therefore we are buying refined products at a high cost. All these things are contributing to our economic issues that we are facing today. We have not done it in the most optimum way. So it is easier to buy refined products at a higher cost, but end of the day we are using our economic benefits. And this is the slide I'm showing where our electricity sector has the installed capacity for supplying us. You can see the blue column at the bottom, which is our major hydropower plants, Victoria, Kotmale, Lakshapana, Samanlava, and so on. Together, all together, we have little less than 1,500 megawatts. So it's a major contributor. And then we have the oil-based oil and coal-based thermal power plants, both belonging to CEB and private sector. So we can see we have by 2019, we have a pretty big portion coming from private sector and CEB on thermal power plants. And then we have on top of that, new renewable energy, solar, wind and biomass and so on. And on the very top, the yellow part, top cap, is the micro power plants. Basically, what we have today is the rooftop power plants. Rooftop power plants. So we have by today about 420 plus megawatts of rooftop capacity. But some of these things are dispatchable. For example, hydropower plants, large hydro plants are dispatchable. That is, we can ask the power plant to run when we want. Thermal power plants are dispatchable. But some of the new renewable energy plants like solar and wind, they will operate when the resource is available. Solar during daytime if the space is clear. Wind if the wind is available. Wind is available usually seasonally. So wind has an off season and a season. And so this is how the gross generation has been there from these different installed capacities. And we can see that here, the variation of the supply of this blue column, blue bottom, you can see in some years, let's see, where's my mouse?
Yes.
Yeah, in some years, you can see, for example, take 2030, the hydro has been at the highest level, right? So that has been a very wet year. Whereas 2012, if you look at, has been a very dry year. So when you have a very dry year, you need a lot of thermal power generation. And if you don't have fuel for the thermal power plants, then you run into power cuts. So in 2012, I remember we had power cuts, and this year 2022 we have power cuts because we don't have money to buy fuel. Basically, if we had the money to buy fuel, we could have averted some of these power cuts, right? And so you can see the fuel consumption in many power plants. You can see the coal is contributing a lot of electricity to us today. Almost 40-45% of our daily electricity is coming from the Lakvijaya power plant. So at a price which used to be low, but nowadays due to various crises, including the Ukraine-Russia war, coal prices have rocketed up. I will show you some figures later. And not only electricity sector, but the transport sector needs a lot of oils. You can see here. Now I choose to show this because we have queues at every petrol station today, and you can see we need, and diesel is severely in short, and we can see we need a lot of diesel, the purple color, and the bottom pink color is the petrol demand, and you can see diesel is higher. Diesel is diesel plus super diesel. higher demand. So we need a lot of diesel, and this they run into say 3 million tons, right? So 3,000 kilotons means 3 million tons of say fuel oil. So it is pretty expensive. And this is now we are talking about now yesterday the Minister of Power and Energy said they are putting up a cabinet paper to increase the electricity prices on Monday. So I want to show you this is the average selling price of electricity for CEB. So this used to be lower than the average generation cost until say about mid 1990s, where CEB generated a lot of electricity as we saw elsewhere. You can see before 1995, you can see most of the electricity has come from hydropower, right? Hydropower. So CEB used to make profits, even if they sold at a low price, 4 rupees a unit. Still, they made a lot of profits because their hydropower plants were either soft loans or they were grants. So they didn't have any capital investments, only wasting water. The water was free, only the operation and maintenance cost. So even at selling at 4 rupees, they made profits, and the government used to take these profits back to treasury before 1990s. But now it is the reverse way. Government, even now they are selling below the average cost of generation, and therefore they are making losses to the tunes of say about 100 billion rupees every year. Now it will be much more this year because of the higher fuel prices. And so we have all these three categories. Domestic consumers, you can see the biggest part of our clients, consumers in the electricity supply in the bottom. And then we have the industrial, and then the commercial, and street lighting and other things are small. You can see even if we stop street lighting, that will be a small impact, although we see a lot of lights in the night, but the major consumption is in the domestic and the industrial and commercial applications. And since the gas supply is also in turmoil, I thought of looking at this graph also. You can see most of the gas is used in household, commercial, and other uses, and industries a little bit. And you can see this yellow patches that used to be there in 2000, because if you remember those days, people were used to convert their petrol cars to run on gas, LP gas, because gas used to be much cheaper than petrol. But then that competitive edge was lost. So after say 2010 also, this conversion stopped, and then that industry, I think, went away. No more there are gas supplies for vehicles and other things. And the kerosene also in heavy demand in Sri Lanka. We see kerosene queues in the news whenever we watch, because the people still use a lot of kerosene for household and commercial and other uses, and a little bit for industrial, because kerosene is much cheaper compared to electricity. If you cook with electricity, it will be much more expensive. And those who cannot use kerosene, gas for their cooking, they used to use kerosene. And also now there are allegations that the private buses, they are mixing kerosene with diesel, and therefore making an imbalance, because they get the low cost the kerosene to supplement their expensive diesel. I think this will be worst in the coming days, because now the diesel prices have rocketed up, not so much the kerosene, so they will use more. And here this graph, I want to show you this correlation between electricity supply and our economic growth rate. And you can see here, these are growth rates, remember, not the growth, the growth rate, GDP growth rate, that's the percentage. Now we say compared to last year, how much GDP has increased this year, that is the GDP growth rate. Maybe in Sri Lanka's GDP is something like $80 billion. So maybe if you get 1%, so that is $0.8 billion increase, right? If it is 3%, that is $2.4 billion increase in our GDP. You can see here, for example, take a year like say 2012, we talked about, I said 2012 was a dry year and there were power cuts. And in 2012, the electricity supply was in trouble, so it came down. The sales came down. by the short supply of electricity, by the dry weather and lack of water and due to a variety of reasons. And that forced the red line down. That is, the economic growth rate was forced down. Right, forced down. So that is one correlation. Then let us look at 2019-20. 2019-20, it went the other way. Economy shut down because of the lockdowns. Therefore, the red line came down. Red line came down. Therefore, the electricity demand came down. So that was the other way. So now we can see, now today, what is happening is something like 2012. Electricity sector and also now the fuel sector, both are coming down. Sales are coming down because of the short supply. And this invariably will cause our GDP this year to come down. Right? So last year we had very low, in the previous year -1. And this year, Asian Development Bank has predicted Sri Lanka to have about 3.4% economic growth rate that they predicted in 2021 for 2022. But that is the lowest for our region, remember. Our region, Bangladesh, India, Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives, all ADB predicts to have much higher economic growth rate. Sri Lanka is to have the lowest. They have not predicted anything for Afghanistan because of the problems they have there. But otherwise, Sri Lanka is at the bottom of 3.4. And I feel like this will come below 2% simply due to the short supply of electricity and fuel, because it affects all our production and services. Now we can see that in the news you can see tourists are commenting badly of their unwise decision to come to Sri Lanka with all these power cuts, and they are not encouraging people to come here. And we saw there some travel warnings in UK, which invariably go to Europe as well. That is them to be careful if they travel in Sri Lanka. So all these things will put a negative impact on our economic growth rate. So the electricity and economy are very closely related. So in whatever is in trouble, the other party is affected. And so I told you that, that due to a variety of reasons, our international crude oil prices have rocketed up. You can see in 1980s, the oil was pretty cheap, about $20 a barrel, right? $20 a barrel. Then 2008 came the worst year in those days, $140 a barrel. If you remember this hedging deal, CPC, all these things happened here. And then all of a sudden it came to $37, $40 a barrel in very short time. And then it was hovering about, say, on average about $60, $70 a barrel. But today it has gone up to 100 into 130, and now it has come down to 110 at 110 live. So and it is a variety of reasons. I will describe a few later. And this is the coal prices. Coal was pretty cheap throughout, say about less than $70 for a long time. And this is how the electricity planners use the prices. But now it's 2021-22, it has rocketed up to say $200 plus a ton. So unbelievable high cost. Let us look at the reasons in a little while. Same way now we are talking about LNG power plants, because LNG was also used to be very cheap. You can see this is the unit is per million BTU, dollars per million BTU. That's a separate unit for used for the sales of LNG, but don't worry about that. But you can see in the long history, it has been pretty cheap. Even recently, it has been much cheaper. But today, it has jumped up $30-40 per million BTU, right? So why it has happened, right? Reasons, right? So the post-COVID demand increase from major energy users. So the China and India, their factories, their services have jumped up after the recovery from COVID, and they wanted a lot of energy, double their production, and therefore they started to purchase a lot of coal and oil and natural gas. So that put extra pressure on the supply. And then this year we have this hard winter in Europe and even in Canada and other countries, right? So for that they need a lot of energy to keep them heated up. And then Russia, due to this Ukraine unrest, and now it has turned into a war. Russia has supplied their they supply about 30% of the Europe's LNG gas, not LNG, they supply natural gas, complex natural gas, CNG, but through pipelines. Now they have stopped it due to their political agenda. And therefore, Europe is buying from the open market. Therefore, the prices have rocketed up. And also, COVID has impacted workforces in the mines and, the supply chain. And therefore, the supplies have been depleted. And therefore, that all these things together have caused oil, gas, and coal prices to go up. And what are the consequences? Now, as per this high prices, now we can clearly see in our country, but in throughout the world, domestic energy bills are running high. We feel it quite high now, right? We feel it very high because when you go to petrol station and even after the being in the queue, you give 5,000 rupees and you get only a little petrol, little diesel, because the prices are so high now, right? And therefore, the consumer expenditure on other services are getting lower because your budget is now very much depleted. Therefore, your purchasing other services, other products are also getting down because you have to now be careful about your purchases. All business, including the industries, feeling the high energy prices and higher production cost. Now we can say every product cost is going up and they want to increase prices shortly. There's no choice. Now I was in a service station to get my electric car serviced yesterday, and they were they're talking about they want to increase the prices of their workers by 20%. Otherwise, they can't live. And accordingly, they want to increase the service charges and all these things. Right? Okay. And energy import bills of countries have gone up. So we feel it very much. And we don't have money to buy the next shipment, right, of oil. So when the ships have to wait in the harbor several days before the government collects enough dollars to pay for that. That is not much, maybe 30-40 million dollars. Then higher coal, oil, and LNG prices have reduced imports and thereby causing power shortages. In many countries, not only in Sri Lanka, in China also, I learned they have plenty of supplies of coal and other things, but still in some regions in China, they impose power cuts because they couldn't get enough coal, oil, and LNG for their power production facilities. And we talk a lot about renewables, and some people ask now we are, that we are very lucky that our country is having so much of solar and wind and other resources. But still, that these technologies solar has come a long way. Solar has developed a lot in the world, and many countries are going for solar in bulk. But you can see still, this is 2019 figures. Still, you can see total electricity generation from renewable sources is only 27%, and 72% have come from non-renewable, that is from fossil fuel-based generation. And you can see out of 27.3 renewable, nearly 16% is from large hydropower plants. Wind contributing 6%. You can see solar PV. Solar photovoltaic worldwide, only 2.8, that is less than 3% is still generated. And then the biopower and the geothermal, concentrated solar power and ocean power, you can see only 0.4%, because these technologies are not mature enough to produce cheap electricity. So you can see it is unbelievable, that worldwide we talk a lot about large solar power plants coming in various countries, but still the contribution is less than 3% in the annual electricity generation throughout the world. So in Sri Lanka also, we are a poor country. We have to look for cheap power. Otherwise, what will happen is our industries and our services will be too costly for us as well as for visitors. And many people ask the question about this nuclear electricity. Nuclear electricity. You can see nuclear electricity had a very prosperous time in 1970s. And it was, you can see the gradient, how is the gradient of going. You can see new power plants coming up and energy generation. But in 1986, we had the famous or infamous this Chernobyl accident in Russia. It is in Ukraine. Now we often hear in the news also, Ukraine based this power plant has been taken over by Russians after the war. But that put a lot of brakes. So many countries started decommissioning, they got frightened. And therefore, you can see the gradient came down, right? And then in 2011, there came the Japanese accident, Fukushima accident, that also put some brakes. But still, you can see because of the high oil prices and high other prices, still it is trying to recover, still recover. So maybe Sri Lanka also, it's not an easy work to do a nuclear power plant, but we should get ready in case this oil, gas, and coal prices are never coming down and still trying to remain in the high region, then we will also have no option but to go for a cheaper source like nuclear. Remember this now in our region, Pakistan, India, they are already nuclear and they have plenty of nuclear power generation. And currently, Bangladesh is constructing their first nuclear power plant of 2,400 megawatts, and it will be commissioned in 2023, the first 1,200 megawatt, and the second 1,200 megawatt in 2024. So they are going to have nuclear power because it is cheaper. And renewable sector development in Sri Lanka, we can see how annually renewable electricity has come into our supply. This is in million units. So for example, 2013, I told you it was a very wet year. 2012, a very dry year. 2012, you can see the electricity generation has been about, say, 3,500 million units of electricity. Whereas the very next year, it has been almost double, 7,200, like, right? Can see the variation. So the CB has to be ready for this. Can see doubling up, right, or halving. Therefore, they must have extra capacity to cover up this. So this big variation in hydro supply. So you can see it is going up and down, up and down. They have been very wet years, 18, 13, and so on. And also they have been very dry years, right? And this light green block is the new renewable energy, or other renewable energy. Some people call them other renewable energy. Now the new term is new renewable energy, which is solar, wind, and small hydropower, and a little bit of biomass power. Biomass, the problem is sourcing enough firewood for power generation. 1 megawatt, remember 1 megawatt biomass power plant will need about 25 tons of biomass a day. So continuously supplying 25 tons into 1 megawatt power plant is a challenging job. And we have plenty of sunshine and also wind. The left graph is the Sri Lanka solar map, and the right graph is the Sri Lanka's wind map. You can see in the solar map in the coastal areas, especially Mana up to Jaffna and all these areas, and then down here you can see Hambantota and also the eastern province. We have a lot of good solar opportunities, and also throughout the country, excluding the hill country part. And then comes to wind. You can see these purple color areas are the windy places. You can see Putlam. When you travel through Putlam, you can see already the power plants are there, and we can have more. And then we have the 100 megawatt recently commissioned CB wind power plant in Mana, which is also supposed to be a good harvester of energy because they're wind season. And also this entire sea is available for offshore wind generation. But offshore is a little bit more expensive compared to onshore. So therefore, we will first finish our land-based opportunities and then go for the offshore. And you can see in the Jaffna Peninsula also, we have plenty of wind opportunities. And right in the middle of the country we have, but development is the problem because of the narrow roads and other infrastructure, which is preventing us taking large wind turbine and their blades, which are pretty long and they can't be transported in these winding roads. So, but anyway, we have plenty of opportunities, but wind and solar have the problem, inherent problem, especially solar is very much intermittent. When a cloud comes, it can go from say 100% to 30% in 10 minutes. So there should be another power plant ready to take that deficit. But wind is not intermittent as such, but wind is seasonal. Nowadays, these days, you know, this is off season, wind off season. I will show you the generation later on. And because of this availability, we have up to now developed about 200 plus mini hydro power plants, totaling capacity of 400 megawatts. Wind power, 17 plants, 150 megawatt. This is excluding CB 100 megawatt. So with the CB's 100 megawatt, we have nearly 250 megawatts of wind power plants. Let us see, this is off season, how much they are producing in the next couple of slides. Biomass, as I said before, we have only 50 megawatts because biomass supply is not easy. And solar, we have 75 megawatts of large solar plants, but this is excluding the rooftop. Rooftop is the bigger portion now, 420 megawatt. And this is how we have increased our yearly capacity additions of this renewable sector. You can see the top in 2020, top yellow cap, that is rooftop solar. So now this is 2020, now 2022, we have 420 megawatts of rooftop solar. And this is what the CEB's present plan has predicted for the future. So we are somewhere here, 2020-21, and you can see these are the future new power plants to come upon the existing ones. You can see a lot of rooftop solar power plants to come. This is not only rooftop solar, including large solar. You can see they have planned a lot of solar power plants to come, and also wind power plants, right? But biomass, not so much of hydro, because hydro opportunities are now going down a little. And then you can see energy mix, I will not go into it. This is the problem for CEB over the last many years, the variation of electricity demand during the day. You can see in the morning as we start our day, heating up our kettles and other things, putting our lights on in the morning, and you can see a small peak in the morning. This is 2020 yellow curve. And then we go to office, and then you are on the road and slight reduction. And then during the daytime, peak increase. And then evening, when we come back and put everything on, evening peak. So this is the problem that we are having in meeting this electricity demand. And this I got from yesterday's. This is yesterday's electricity supply. I got it from CEB's website. I have 3 curves. So I'm getting the numbers for, this is right in the middle, 12:30 in the midday yesterday. You can see coal has supplied 800 megawatts, large hydro 540, and then oil, thermal oil 600. And you can see biomass only 11 megawatts, and mini hydro little bit. And you can see yesterday mid-time, out of 250 megawatts, 0 megawatts of wind, because this is the off season for wind. And only 10.8 megawatts of solar. This is excluding rooftop. Out of 70 megawatt, only 10 megawatt of solar has come during the yesterday's daytime. This is yesterday's morning session. Understandably, no solar, 0 megawatt. That is understandable at 6 a.m. But still, wind is only 0.3 megawatt. You can see all the balances, other power plants. Whenever there is a deficit, CEB is forced to use a lot of water. See, a lot of water is used, because whenever there is deficit, they are forced to use water, but that water usage empty our reservoirs. That is a growing concern now. This is the evening peak yesterday. It's still only 2.4 megawatt from wind, because wind is off season. Then you can see we had to draw a lot of water from the reservoirs to meet the demand. So what are the steps we can take immediately to solve this problem? Conserve electricity, conserve oil, no other option. Think twice when you start your car to go somewhere, and also think twice when you switch on something of electricity. See whether you can stop that, you can refrain on that. Use them sparingly, that will help the country. And if all of us think that way, we can help the crisis to ease a little bit. And the long and medium term, we must implement the CEB's long-term least cost generation expansion plan without delay. And we must get a healthy portfolio of base load power plants. That is the base, like the coal power plant. And then increase the share of indigenous energy in both electricity generation and other uses. So I'm sorry that if I took a little more time, but I come to the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Professor. I think now it's time for us to move into the QA session. And we would like to invite all the participants to forward your questions. You can put it in your chat box, you can type it, or you can just raise your questions through the reactions button, pressing the reaction button where you can put your answer. and we will take a question. Both Professor Vijaypala and Engineer Malraj will answer your questions. Yeah, now the floor is open. The session is open for questions. Maybe the starting point, Shamini, you have already got some questions, right? If you can forward that or read it out, then we can start from there. Then others can give the questions.
Yes. Am I audible, Mahe?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. One question is, how are the present schedules, that power cut schedules are done? Why is it that some areas don't have power cuts at all, while some areas do?
Yeah, I think Malraj also can answer, but I will put a line. You know that CB tries to not to interrupt any feeders containing, say, health services, maybe government, maybe private sector, health services, hospitals. So if you are lucky and if you are in one of those feeders, you will not get interruptions. And also industrial zones and industries, they will also try to stop power cuts. So that is also there. And then in Colombo also, they are not implementing power cuts. I think a couple of times I saw, but not generally. But it's understandable. I'm living outside. I'm living in Piliyanthala, so I get power cuts just like I am a power cut. But still, I agree. You know that our capital or the commercial capital. If we shut down our commercial capital, so that is a major impact on our visitors coming here, and our industries and our commercial transactions, the banking and all these. Some of them have generators, but of course, so we have to, well, if you are lucky in there, living there, you will get electricity. But if you are trying to strictly follow the fair basis and everybody should have electricity, but I personally don't agree, because we must try to keep our industries, our commercial work, and they are supporting our exports and other things. So we have to, I think, to bear these things sometimes, right? You can't go by the 100% equal basis sometimes. And if you are lucky and living in those areas, you will enjoy uninterrupted electricity. But I think Engineer Malraj can also add a line.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with what Professor Vijaypal said. Of course, having said that, now we give priority to health sector and then water supplies and for emergency supplies. And the priorities are decided mainly by the regional inputs that are getting. So it appears that in some cases it has not been fair. In some remote areas also you get continuous supply, maybe due to various reasons, and there have been several allegations. Yeah, that's true.
Right. I could ask a couple of questions in the chat box. Maybe Professor, this you can answer. Any plans for tidal power generation?
I think as you saw in my presentation, this ocean, there's a tidal and all these things in the worldwide is all together, even including geothermal, is less than 0.4% total worldwide, because even the rich countries, although they are doing a lot of research, but still they don't have large scale generation, because these are not that economical, but of course people are doing it. But the tidal opportunities also in Sri Lanka are less, right? Less, but in some countries they do, but the total contributions are still worldwide is less.
And there's another question: why has this year's electricity generation suffered? Is it solely caused by geopolitics and COVID-19, or has the government played a part in causing the issue? If so, how?
It is nothing but the dollar crisis. Because last year we had it, previous year we had it, we have had it for a long time. But every year in January, February, March, April, when we have this, even in my time, when I was the chairman there, we used to buy a lot of emergency power, burn a lot of diesel by emergency power plants, and we kept the supply intact. But now today, when they wanted diesel for that, government cannot provide diesel because of the dollar crisis. So dollar crisis is causing the electricity crisis. And I would like to also add, emergency power plants are too costly. Oil-based generation is too costly. So that should not be there. But they have been necessitated. Why we did not implement our long-term generation expansion plan, and we have not implemented a coal power plant or LNG power plant for last, say, 8 years. Therefore, naturally, we have to go for new emergency power or power cuts.
There were also talks, Professor, both Malraj also can answer this. There were also news and talks that the government was planning to import power from various other countries or a couple of regional countries. What was about it, and is it possible? Like,
I think we should have a connection for that. So the CEB planned a connection to connect our system to India. But that proposal was too expensive, about $600 million proposal to have a marine cable. And now they are trying to revise it to have a shorter marine cable and longer overhead line and connect it. And if we connect it, we will have a better electricity security. Malraj, you want to add something on that?
Yes, that project is still active, and I think it is a viable option for power security. And there is, of course, the dialogue between the two countries, India and Sri Lanka, on the prices of electricity, how it is being prices at different stages, and when we have surplus, how would be priced, and then when we need, how we would price. So there are still there are negotiations, and the project is still active, but the last few years we have not been pursuing it.
if hypothetically, if it approved, how long will it take to implement? Like, is it something can be done within 4 or 5 years, or will it take?
I think 3 years. 3 years should be okay.
Okay.
3-4 years, yes.
And there's another question on if the subsidy is removed for consumers, what will be the new price likely to be?
Malraj, you want to take? Yes.
Yeah, the by actual cost of generation and not generation, actually the consumer point cost would be something around 24 rupees a unit, 23 to 24. So this year it may be a little bit higher. So that will be the price. So now it is around 1650 selling price. So if the subsidy is reduced, it will be about 24 rupees.
That is on average, but we have the block tariff, and so the different people get different tariff.
Yes.
Average about 10 rupee increase for everybody, like, per unit.
So what is the proposed price increase at the moment? You were talking about, Professor, about cabinet proposal for a price increase. Will it be about 10% or 20%?
Yeah, we didn't see it. The CB is proposing it. I don't know whether Malraj knows something on that. And
CB is requesting a high figure, but I don't think the government will agree to that. Maybe around 25% of increase.
Yeah, I also think about 20-25% increase should be fair and reasonable. You know that in Sri Lanka, electricity prices are not cheap because we have opted to use oil for electricity generation. No other country in our region or in the world uses oil for electricity generation. Our 1/3 of our electricity comes from oil. Oil is expensive. Only oil producing countries use oil for electricity generation. We should use either coal or natural gas for electricity generation. That is the cheap options. So I think in the long term, we should not try to match the CEB's average generation cost. We must try to get the CEB's average generation cost down. That can be only done by cheap generation.
Yes.
There was a question on how the nuclear energy created. So I think it's talking about the plant.
Yeah, nuclear power plant is just like, I would say, Lakvijay power plant, because the entire generation system is a steam power generation. So only difference is in Lakvijay power plant, we produce steam by burning coal. in a nuclear power plant, we produce steam by nuclear reaction. So there will be a nuclear reactor. So nuclear reactor will have the nuclear reaction, fission reaction, where uranium will break down into two components and thereby produce heat. And once that heat is produced, it will produce steam. And then onwards, it is like any other steam power plants like Lakvijaya. So only the method of steam generation is different. So every nuclear power plant has a nuclear reactor to do that.
Alright, there's a question on does CEB train technician to have a flood of small companies in the market which may bring down the price of rooftop solar power units?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Does CEB train technician to have a flood of small companies in the market, the solar power companies, so that it will bring down the prices?
Yeah, I don't think it is the CB has to do it. It is the responsibilities on the Sustainable Energy Authority, because even now the system of connecting this rooftop solar is getting very delayed because of the problem of having no standards. We should have strict standards of the solar system. If the system is standardized, and if the standardized system is connected, we don't have to check or test it over and over again for harmonics and various other things. So the delay is mainly due to testing. So I think yes, we have to have a new ways of testing the units quickly, and then proceed with the connections. Now the problem is also the new solar generations, rooftop solar generations do not have good standards or good quality.
Normally, how long will it take to give the permission and the approval process? All right. Okay, is pause for a moment.
I think until Malraj comes, yes. So I think it can happen quickly, but now there are restrictions in certain areas where you have many solar rooftops already connected. So there are low voltage issues and other things. Therefore, CB is little reluctant to connect more. So we have to look carefully, because otherwise other people will have higher voltages in their premises, those who are not having solar rooftops. So we have to look at these things carefully and do that. But about the companies, I would like to add that, you know, that the solar panels and inverters, they have long lifetimes. Say solar panels will have 20 plus years of warranty. And then inverters have 10-year plus warranty. But now there's no warranty for those companies. You know, to give the warranty, company must survive, you know. So many companies who provide services, they don't last that long. Therefore, the buyers are in trouble. So this is happening in the worldwide also. Now, I was CEO of Windforce Private Limited for 2 years during my sabbatical leave. And we bought from a German company solar panels for a 10 megawatt plant. And then after 1 year, we had failures of so many panels. We wrote to them to get them replaced. But then we found that the company is gone. Company was not there. It has declared bankruptcy. So you can see, no one to give us the warranty. So these things can happen, you know. It's long term, 20 years lifetime. I think we should work out an insurance method or something, you know, yes. Even if the company doesn't last, insurance companies will pay for
that. There's a question on, are consumers allowed to legally store energy battery, and what is the outlook for the next 5 years on generation of power? Will the target be achieved? There are 3 questions, I think, connected to it.
Malraj, can you take?
Malraj? I think he's stuck again.
Okay. Okay, now it is legal.
Yeah.
It is legal now. You can have, you know, that there are several kind of inverters. When you have a solar system produces DC power. So you need to convert it to AC. So that you need an inverter. So before that, we bought down in my roof, we have a grid tie inverter. It doesn't work if the grid is not available. And it doesn't work with the battery. But now there are hybrid inverters. If you can get a hybrid inverter, and solar panels and a battery. Now the CEB permits you to have that. You can have it. So when there is a power cut also, your battery can provide you electricity, depending upon the battery capacity, and you can sell to CEB as well. So that system is now officially available.
All right.
But for the existing rooftop owners, including me, it may not be viable to replace the already purchased inverter, which is an expensive component, immediately with a hybrid inverter. It will be too costly. So after 10 years, the lifetime is over for the inverter. Then even I plan to go for hybrid, but not immediately.
Shamini, any other questions? Because there are quite a few questions coming up. The questions that you have
Sorry, I got
already.
disconnected.
Oh, Malraj is back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shamini?
Yes, there was a question about what is the impact on the manufacturing sector, large, medium, and small scale manufacturers.
Malraj, you don't take it?
I don't have the data, but definitely there will be a huge impact, because if we have power cuts during daytime, especially, most of the industries will be hampered, and it's the same. But in selecting areas to power cut, mostly this industrial zones are avoided, but small industries are suffering from the power cuts.
Some of them have generators, but now the diesel is not available, so they are in double trouble now.
Yes,
Can see.
yes.
Generator, still they can't use it.
Yeah, now we have the self-generation scheme in place in CB and paying at 42 rupees a unit, but it doesn't seem attractive to the it doesn't seem attractive.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure,
Professor. Yeah, Professor Vijaypala mentioned that it is like our responsibility to conserve energy, which I think we as consumers can do that. But on the other hand, when you take, government sector, which is using large scale officers and, the air conditioners, is there any plan to for them to reduce the energy in their offices or in their, in the case of the government sector? I mean, when I'm saying government sector, I'm talking about the politicians.
I think the government recently issued a circular, but that doesn't get effectively working, because people are not very much serious on these things. So only thing is we must take active action. For example, government could, I have already proposed at various forums, government did that, just like say COVID period, government can say, okay, non-essential services, like some officers which are not providing an essential service to the government or the public, they can have 50% working from home, right? Not very, so say, loss-making institutions and other places, right? So they can ask them to work 50% from home or something like that. So you can say then actually some traveling will be reduced, and also the officers will use less energy. And so likewise, we must take some productive and active actions to reduce this. Just by releasing a circular saying after 2:30 you must shut down your ACs and all that, I don't know whether it is very effective.
Thank you.
Now there are requests for the public to use both the energy and power sparingly and with sort of sparingly and carefully. What are the practical possible ways of doing that?
I think we should have some rules and regulations. I think other countries do.
Can you give us some examples of other countries' practice? Now, I know certain countries nowadays, like the European countries, also imposing certain rules on how to maintain the heater and all those things. So,
yeah, I think now if you are very serious, now government should be very serious on our oil. Oil is, every liter of oil we are paying so much to the international market. So I think our vehicle usage should be reduced. So they can say, for example, they can put up some kiosks on main roads and say, if one person is driving in a vehicle, pay 500 rupees when you enter Colombo, right? So something like that, then that will discourage you, at least ask him to bring another fellow. Of course, this will give rise to various crooked deals, like somebody will get in and get out after 2 kilometers and come back and go in rotation, and these things happening in other countries also. But it's still, then people will be a bit careful. Some action is required. Now we are now trying to get our ships released from the port by every time really connecting $40-50 million, but we are never taking a step to reduce fuel usage here. Right, everybody is getting fuel now. I was in on the road today in my electric car. Then I saw a huge block coming on the road because diesel Bowser has come to a petrol station ahead. That was a narrow road. Therefore, the road was completely blocked. There was, I think, a couple of kilometers long queues of the vehicles, normal vehicles who are traveling. I think they were burning a hell of a lot of petrol and diesel, being on the blocked road. Right, see the wastage. Right, but no action. Now, even being on the queue, how much fuel you waste? Right, how much fuel you waste in being on the queue? Starting and stopping and starting and stopping and going 2 meters and stopping again. All these things are wastages. So I think some actions are required. I think these things should have been done proactively, not before the problem comes. If the government feels we are running out of dollars, they must have planned these things. Now the fuel lines will come in the sheds. Then how we can avoid that? How we can avoid that? Right? Some rationing or something. Everybody can get, say, 20 liters a month. You manage with that. Can't help. It is better than having queues and having all these this unrest with the people. So everybody having a vehicle, get 20 liters. Manage with that. No more. You go to the just like 1970s, early 70s. Can't help. But now it's worse. Now we are on the queues, spending a lot of time, day and night.
There is another question on a company in US is using discarded EV batteries to store solar power and provide it to the grid. Is this something the CB could explore by sponsoring R&D at technical universities?
I think that is possible. That is done in many countries. Used electric these batteries, car batteries, because they can be dismantled and made into a working model, even if they are not working for the vehicle. And then with the CEB has now given the permission to have batteries in your premises, so we can have that system. So I know that there are a couple of places in Colombo and in suburbs where they are processing these electric vehicle batteries. Yesterday I was at a place while my car was being serviced. I was witnessing. So they were dismantling EV batteries, leaf batteries, and try to mix batteries and to some modify and all these things. So that technology is coming up. Not the CEB, private sector will do it. But unfortunately, now getting down batteries to this country is a huge problem for the existing vehicles. So government should support that.
Yes.
Shamini, any questions that you have with you?
Yes, there are two questions. 1 second. So is there a threat to continuous supply of coal this year? And the other question is to Malraj actually, can CEB stick to the same schedule instead of changing the schedules of power cuts?
Coal, as far as I know, we have made all the orders requiring for this year. All that coal has to be obtained before by April, because the season that we could unload coal would be by end of April. So as I heard, CB has government has made the orders, but then we have to make the payment. For some orders, still payments are pending. So that depends. If you make the full payment, coal won't be a problem. What is the second question?
can they stick to same power cut schedule instead of rotating?
The same schedule for imposed by one day to continue
Yeah,
every day.
I guess so. Is that the question, Shamini? Now, technically, the problem is, Malraj, there is now some days the instructions are given on power cuts on certain days, but it never takes place, and suddenly the power cut
Yes.
comes on.
Yes. Today
Unscheduled
I
hours.
experienced the same today.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe because now this supply and demand managing is something that you do continuously. Okay, it's although we have predictions and planning for doing power shadings, there may be practical situations that you not be able to supply the demand if some power stations gets interrupted. Say now presently Kalanidhi says out of order, I hear. So because of that, we shouldn't be getting power cuts today, but we got power cuts for about 1 hour. So there are practical issues like that. And if you stick to the same schedule, for some, it becomes unfair because some are getting power cuts, even especially at evening, at very peak times. While others get at off-peak times. So to balance off only, this schedule is rotated. Uh, I think that is the logic or the reasoning behind that.
But I think there's a fairness in that question, because you know that when the time is shifted, people get confused. They don't get the time in advance, and so if it is the same time every day, people know it very well that our power is going to be disconnected from this hour. Oh, this is the probable duration. On some days it might not be. Yeah, on some days it's not be there. And then the fairness question comes whether it should be rotated, all that. But I think because of the communication issue, it might be, now they are cutting 4 hours, maybe 1 hour into 4 during night time. So whether it is 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 or 9 to 10, it doesn't matter very much for everybody. So, so if you can stick to one slot, and then during the daytime also, whether it is say 10 to 12 or 12 to 4 or 4 to 6, it doesn't matter very much. If you can stick to one slot, maybe for the future we can consider these things in the design in the power cuts.
Yes. So if we continue with the same duration, we can do that. But the problem is we suddenly have 2.5 hours and then we suddenly go to 5.5 hours. So
but Malraj, you can start at the same time and then have the 2 hours or 3 hours from that hour. So for that region, then you know our power cuts may start at 10 o'clock in the morning, if any, and then it can go to 12 or even to 1 or even to 2. Depending upon the day. So when you are declaring that today's power cuts are 4 hours, they know it is 4 hours. When you make an overall declaration, today's power cuts are daytime 4 hours, nighttime 1 hour, they know our 4 hours begin at 10 in the morning. So it goes till 2 p.m. So people have a understanding about power cut time, but now the uncertainty put more frustration into people. So they are expecting power cuts at 10 o'clock, now it is coming at 3 p.m. So maybe they are wearing some tuition or whatever they work, now they are disrupted. So I think the certainty is good even to have power cuts. Maybe in the future we should consider these things.
We will propose that. To have a definite schedule time for power cuts. In the daytime and the evening. Yes.
Maybe if you want to shuffle it, do once a month.
Yes.
Once a month. Every first of the month, you change the time. Then the people know. Now, on the first of the month, it's going to change our time. So we must look for it. Only for once for that month. So they can find out.
There was a question about the safety of nuclear power plants for our country. Maybe Professor Vijaypala could comment on that.
Yeah, safety, that nuclear power plants are, although there have been a couple of accidents compared to other accidents and deaths, it is far less. In Sri Lanka, every day we lose 8 deaths, 8 people by road accidents. So in the morning, all the workforce goes out, but 8 people don't come home in our country. See how pathetic it is. But nuclear power doesn't have that kind of impact in the worldwide. Some countries have had nuclear power. For example, take France, 0 accidents, and they produce 75% of their electricity from nuclear. And say India, Pakistan, they have very, countries where they have terrorism and everything to the fullest extent, but they maintain their power plants, nuclear power plants very well, and no accidents, no attacks on their nuclear power plants. But and Bangladesh right now putting up their first power plant, as I said earlier. But nowadays we have enough ways of protecting nuclear power plants. They are safe. Only thing is people have misconceptions, so it will be very difficult to implement an.
Yes.
I think yes, they got the power and the dongles changing probably.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Until then, there's another question we can take. Shamini question, because then I can move into the other.
No, please go ahead, Mahen.
Okay. There's a question on, do we have a plan to introduce demand response changes in the future? How the CEB plans to subsidize only for needy and targeted population? I think Malraj, yeah.
Yeah. It's not planned yet. Yeah, the thinking is there. Mostly, it's demand side management concept is being implemented, but one way of doing it is to have smart metering, to have several blocks per day, and then introduce different tariffs for different times of the day. So I don't know how practical it is that having just analog meters. But if you are going for smart metering, then definitely it is possible. Is that what was asked? Or?
No. Then the second question is, so how do we target? Is the subsidy only for the needy and targeted population, like the people who are at certain kind of economic conditions?
Yes, yeah, that is what should happen. But then it's the problem is now how do we differentiate between the needy and the now the system is unfair.
I think the subsidy should be given to targeted group like Samurti only.
Yes.
And the other people should not be given the subsidy, but based on the actual cost. But now, for example, say the richest man in Sri Lanka, now he has a bungalow in Anuradhapura where he goes and stay once a month, right? He will use about say 20, 30, 40 units for the month. So he will get electricity as say 5 rupees a unit. The richest man, you can say. So which is not required.
There's another question on, does CEB encourage rooftop solar units, or is it not happy to have more such units?
Sorry, CEB?
Does CEB encourage rooftop solar units, or is it not happy to have more such units?
No, CEB should encourage rooftop solar because the problem with solar is the space. Now, to generate 1 megawatt, you need 3 acres. Okay, so the requirement like 300 megawatts of generation, like Lakvijay 1 plant, we need about 1000 megawatts of solar. That if you have a capacity of 1000 megawatts solar, only we can produce energy that is produced by a 300 megawatt coal power plant. So which means for 1000 megawatts of solar plants, you need 3000 acres of land. So I don't know whether we could afford it. So rooftop is a good option because that is the area that we don't utilize for anything else. So rooftop solar should be encouraged by CB. CB has not been doing it, but I think in the future, CB should be doing it. Rooftop solar.
Going on the same question, Malraj, now there are a lot of apartments and the condominiums are coming up. Is there any time anybody put a proposal to have a large scale solar units, or like, for an example, the place I live, Nivasipura, which has about 1,000 houses, and each house put a solar unit or few units, that the generation of electricity could be very high. Or if you look at Millennium City, there are large number of schemes, Radulugama schemes.
Yes.
Can that be?
Yes.
Is
But
that
then electricity is supplied individually to them, isn't it? Is it
Yeah,
given?
or can they put individually and collect it as a corporate thing for SIM? Then you have a large volume of power generation.
Yes, that can be done. But that can be done because concept is also the new concept is also in solar and wind is to have collecting stations so that you can regularize the supply. Like these are heavily fluctuating, varying kinds of energy forms. So if we have proper regulating stations, we can have more regular supplies. So it is a possibility, but then you have to have a grid substation or whatever to collect all the supply together, and then I don't know how the metering is going to be, because that is a difficulty. Each and every house has to be metered separately. Uh, Now the present practice is to separate meter them separately. So, but that's a possibility, collecting it at one place and then stepping it up so that the losses would be minimized. Yes.
Right. I think those are the questions. So we are.
Just one question from me is,
Yeah.
I mean, how long are we going to suffer this situation? Is there any kind of light at the end of the tunnel?
I think we will have to wait till end April, until we get the first monsoon rains, hopefully in early May, to get better this thing. But of course, government will be in deeper trouble, I think, in the coming months, coming weeks also, to have find enough dollars to buy oil. So probably we will have power cuts for some more time. And to come into that rooftop matter, I would like to tell this, that in the future, if anybody is building a house, discuss with your architect and have your part, at least one half of your roof to face south. That is the best orientation for solar. One problem with rooftops are, now even in my roof is not best looking at the sun. So I lose a lot of energy because of that. So our new house constructions, when you are building a new house, make sure that one of your roof sides are facing due south, so that you will have a best harvest from your rooftop. And give the publicity to do this when your friend is building a house or something. So advise him to have the roof oriented properly for better electricity generation, because someday they will have a solar PV rooftop system.
Mahen, there were 3 more questions in the chat session.
Yeah. We will go to that, and with that we will conclude. One of that is, can local community be encouraged to use regular exercise to generate electricity? Example, dynamos to be connected to gym workouts.
I would like to add on that. We did some research on this. So there's a unit produced at our university, and there's a YouTube video also. Now we are demonstrating it. That we call it energy harvester. Where you do your regular exercise. That is for both arms, for the arms to rotate the wheel as well as to ride it like a bicycle. So both producing electricity and then putting it to a battery. And we want to commercialize it. Maybe it will happen. And the unit is available at Morto University if anybody wants to have a look at. The unit is functioning and it's available in the University of Morto. And we just last week also we put up a video also. Video is available in the YouTube, demonstrating the unit. If anybody is interested, you can contact Malraj. I will give the video link to Malraj and you can get it from him.
That's great. And then I have another question, and may I suggest to use the railway platform rooftops to have solar panels?
Why not? Yes, it's like any other roof. They can have it, and their lights and the data and their consumption can be from that.
Yes.
Going on that, Malraj, you were talking about no regulatory body on the solar panels. Can't CEB take over that role? Is there a problem in CEB taking over the role on approving the solar panels so that the quality is always standardized?
The suppliers are registered under sustainable energy authorities. So that is where the problem comes. Most
I
of
think
these,
Malraj, I think now the Sri Lanka's standard institution, they have published several standards now about the panels and about the inverters and about the wiring and about all these things. Now there are Sri Lanka's standards available on them, and the suppliers have to comply with that now.
Okay. Right. So that means now coming into place that the regulatory.
They are already in place.
Okay. Right.
Yes. Now the SCA is insisting everybody to stick to and comply with the SLSI standards for the rooftop industry.
right. So if that standard is maintained, there should be less testing,
Yes.
and there should be less time doing giving the connection, connectivity to the grid.
But one hitch with these things is, because I know, because I also have some rooftops. Now in the inverters, there is a setting. If your system goes to higher voltage, inverter will shut down, right? And no production. Now then what happens is, now even if the CEP at the testing stage look at this and see whether it is set correctly, but later these service providers come and increase that setting because their customers don't get the harvest. So now I think most of the inverters connected to them have improper settings, so they produce high voltages. But if you correctly set it, you don't produce much during the daytime, especially during the midday when you have the highest production. So when you go and complain to your panel producer, the service provider, he will come and increase it. Otherwise, it's a nuisance for him. Customer was always complaining that I don't produce during the daytime. My inverter shut down. So they come and increase it. Now, CEB can't go every now and then and check it now. So this is how the things stand at the moment.
Right.
So if you have a number of them competing like that, the supply of the system will naturally go up.
Yes.
Maybe to 240s and 50s.
Yes. So I know, because I am a solar producer, prosumer, as well as I know the system. So I see these things happening, you know. But someday some regulation need to be done.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Now we are reaching 8 o'clock, so it's 1.5 hours gone, right? And so thank you, Professor. Thank you, Malraj, giving your time and valuable time to give us, educate us, and also explain all the pluses and the minuses of the energy crisis. And we also thank you all those who participated, and we will be also continuing this discussion on different crises. Now we started with power. We will be talking about economic and so other things, and that which we will be organizing in due course, and we will keep all of you all posted. Thank you very much for participating in this. And again, Malraj and Professor Vijaypal, thank you very much for educating us and guiding us.
Listen to be with discussing with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How many days